Hello class, this is chapter 23, wireless networking. We're going to be talking about what a wireless network is, we're going to talk about the components, we're going to talk about how to analyze and explain what a wireless network is, and then we're also going to talk about installing and configuring wireless networks. Finally, at the end, we'll learn how to fix them and troubleshoot them. So what is a wireless network? Well, a wireless network is just like when you talked about local area networks, except without wires. So there's multiple different ways to use wireless networks. Some of the older ways is infrared. It had to be line of sight, so that way you had to basically like a laser, but it wasn't a laser, it was infrared. That's explained on page 1056. Some of the devices that used this were PDAs and printers. The speeds were not very good. They were similar to probably PCI speeds. Wireless networking, though, was not limited to PCs either, or PDAs. They started adding it into other devices. As we all know cell phones and stuff like that. A wireless card is basically just like your network card, except it has an antenna. Okay, so what types of wireless networks are there? Well, the cut. Okay. Oh. Okay. Wireless networking, take 2. Hello class. We're going to be talking about chapter 23, which is wireless networks. We're going to be talking about what a wireless network is, what makes up a wireless network, how to explain and analyze wireless networking standards. We're going to talking about how to install and configure wireless networks, and finally how to fix and troubleshoot wireless networks. Let's talk a little bit about where we came from. Wireless networks were, when they first came out, were older. When they were older, they had things like infrared, which is line of sight, so it was kind of like acted like a laser. You had to see it from one to the other. We developed other wireless standards that were more radio based, 802.11a, which was fairly slow, and then B, which was a little bit faster, but they were not compatible with each other. Some of the devices that would use a wireless network with the infrared and the older technologies was like PDAs and high-end printers. Something else, though, is you could install it using different devices like the PCI cards or USB. Today, wireless networks have grown significantly. So we use them in our phones, laptops, our vehicles. So I mean, the way it's going is just endless. So what's the purpose of a wireless network? Well, the purpose of a wireless network is to extend the LAN, or that local area network. It operates on the Ethernet protocol, and it has to use a device called a wireless access point, or a WAP, W-A-P. And WAP can work with multiple devices. It can work on a switch or the home internet routers, or you can have it just as a standalone device, a wireless access point. Most of the devices draw their power from like a wall outlet, but there are newer ones that can draw their power from something called power over Ethernet. It gets it from the networking switch. Wireless also has come in other forms such as Bluetooth, but we'll talk about those in a little bit. Wireless networks work the same way as a hub would. So they have the same type of collision sensing and everything. They also have the RTS CTS protocol, which is the request to send and clear to send, just like a hub does. In terms of configuring the software for a wireless network, for a wireless access point, it's very simple. And we're going to go through that in the lab. So, Windows XP and later included tools to look for wireless networks. That way you didn't have to manually program it in every single time. There are multiple modes for wireless networks. There's ad hoc mode and infrastructure mode. Ad hoc is going to be used in peer-to-peer networks. So that means from laptop to laptop, or phone to phone, or phone to laptop, something like that, or phone to PC. Infrastructure mode is when you use it to pass along the networking information from your local area network or your LAN. That way you can get internet access, stuff like that. This infrastructure mode is the most common mode that you'll see on wireless access points, because you want to extend that LAN. That's the whole purpose of you installing most of these access points. So the other thing though is you have to be careful with extending the LAN, because you run into security issues. Again, it works like a hub, so if anyone connects, they can see anything that works on that device. So let's talk about security really quick. There's multiple different ways to control your access point, or your access to your access point. One is through something called the SSID. That's your wireless name. By default, most of these are configured to broadcast the SSIDs for ease of connection. In the access point, though, you can actually disable that. Then another way is called MAC address filtering. Remember, a MAC is your NIC, or your network interface card address. It's that hardware address for that NIC. So if you're going to filter that, that means what you're going to do is you're going to only allow certain MAC addresses on, or the other way is to block specific MAC addresses. Next, we run into encryption. The earliest form of wireless access point encryption is something called WEP. It wasn't very good. It was rudimentary at best. So it was cracked pretty quickly. So they had to develop newer ones. The next one they developed was Wi-Fi Protected Access. That is WPA. This one turned into a more robust and more challenging to crack encryption. The encryption is from the device to the wireless access to the LAN. So that way the connection between cannot be watched and monitored. But ultimately they had to even go further, and they had to go to WPA2. That is the one we use most commonly today. It's very good. It does multiple different types of encryption, including TKIP and AES, or Advanced Encryption Standard. A new way to connect to your access point, instead of programming it manually, is WPS, or Wi-Fi Protected Services. Wi-Fi Protected Setup, I apologize. What that does is it creates an encrypted connection strictly between your device and the access point. So, those are the encryption methods and the ways we use to currently protect access points in the wireless networks. Another way you can protect it is physically. So then we get into placement of the access points. So that way we can guard against people not necessarily connecting from such a certain distance. But then we run into speed and range issues. So let's talk about access point placement real quick. When we look at access point placement, we need to look at where is the most access that we're going to need be. So in a home, you're going to look at centralized placement of your access point. That way it covers the perimeter of your home, and that's about it. Some of the more powerful ones, like 802.11n and AC now, will go beyond your home perimeter. But that's okay. You can always dial the power back on that as well. That's a more advanced topic, but if you can find that setting in your access point, more than welcome to play with it and see where you can get your most access at. Now here's the thing about placement, is the further away you get from a radio, the weaker the signal gets. So if the signal gets weaker, the issues you're going to run into are speed. So the further you get away from your access point, the slower your connection. So let's go and look at an example from the book. If you're probably within about 2 to 5 meters of your access point, you're going to get your very quick connections. Now if you get beyond 20 feet, you're going to start seeing connection speed drops. And this is just a nuance, as you would say, for how a radio works, because the power only goes so far. Now there are some things where you have to look about for interference. One of those be cordless phones. They work on the same range as most access points, the 2.4 gigahertz or the 5 gigahertz range. Phones will now interfere with wireless access points. So that's going to drop your speed. Also, outside of the distance, you obviously won't get any connection. Most access points will reach about 150 feet for a good connection, and maybe 300 feet for just a dead connection. These are current access points. If you have anything a little older than 2 to 3 years, you're going to have less range. Let's talk about these standards. I was throwing them out earlier: 802.11n, 802.11a, b, AC. What do those mean? Well, these are standards that were developed for determining the speeds that these devices should have as a standard. Because otherwise everyone would just be like the Wild West, and everyone would have their own thing, and only proprietary devices could connect. So like say a Cisco wireless network card could only connect to a Cisco access point. We don't want that. That would be really difficult to work with. So the way we did this, or the way they did this, was to develop these standards, connection standards. So there's 802.11a. It's one of the first actual Wi-Fi, what would be called Wi-Fi standards. Next is 802.11b. It works on the 2.4 gigahertz range. The 802.11a works on 5 gigahertz. 802.11g is now backwards compatible with B, so that would make it also a 2.4 gigahertz network. This did increase the range as well as the speed. Next we have 802.11n. This is also backwards compatible with B and G. This works on the 2.4 gigahertz range, but you also can add, or some of the access points now also have for N the 5 gigahertz radios. So the technology is too far advanced though for an A adapter to connect to it. So we have, and then there's AC, which is the newest, but we won't really need to worry about that for this chapter. It literally just came out probably, within the last year. That's really became prevalent. Okay, so what are these speeds now for each of these? Well, 802.11a had a max speed of 54 megabits per second and a 150 foot range. Well, and it worked on 5 gigahertz. 802.11b had a 300 foot range, but only worked at 11 megabits per second. and it worked on the 2.4 gigahertz range. So your advantages between those two was range or speed. Which one did you need? If you needed speed, then you were going to go with A. If you needed range, you needed to go with B. Now you have G. 802.11g brought the speed up to 54 megabits per second. So you could completely drop A and go with B and G and you'd be good. Unless you had an A adapter. But at that point it was old enough, you just needed to upgrade anyway. Now we have 802.11n. And that's between 100 and 150 megabits per second with the 300 foot plus range. It also operates in both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz radios. So if you have a cordless phone at home that works on the 2.4 gigahertz, you switch to the 5 gigahertz radio and you're not going to have any interference. And vice versa, if you have a 5 gigahertz cordless phone, you switch to the 2.4 gigahertz wireless networking and you have no interference. There's other wireless standards out there as well. Infrared is still used, not near as much, but it is used. This is an older standard, so it only operated with a max throughput of 4 megabits per second and had a maximum range of 1 meter. So this is very personal. So say you had a printer here and your laptop here. This is where you're going to use something like that. That way you just didn't have to, you could sit across the room and then have your laptop at the other end of the room. As long as they had line of sight and no one walked in between you or set up equipment in between you, you're fine. Bluetooth is the most common one now. Now you have Bluetooth 3.0 and 4.0. These are low power consumption releases of Bluetooth. So they're more used now in cordless, not cordless, but your cell phones and stuff like that. But these do not work on a Wi-Fi connection. These work on and create what's called a PAN, or a personal area network. There's multiple classes of Bluetooth: Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3. Class 1 works at 100 meters, Class 2 works at 10 meters, and Class 3 works at 1 meter. All of these have different speeds and also have different power requirements. Finally, you have cellular. Cellular is by the cell phone companies. These have different speeds that come with them, depending on your cell phone carrier. So, say AT&T, you're working on theirs, and you're going to get anywhere between 15 and 20 megs, which is not bad for cellular. I mean, it's portable. It's got significant range. Just basically all you have to do is have a cell phone connection. Okay. Now we're going to talk about configuring a Wi-Fi access point. First, you need to determine, is this going to be an ad hoc network or a infrastructure network? If it's going to be ad hoc, then you just have to set the connection between basically your portable device and your access point, or between a portable device and portable device. That works just as well. If it's infrastructure, though, there's a little bit more setup to go through. And we're going to be doing this in the lab. So there's a website you're going to go to be able to address this. And we're going to step through some of it with you. Infrastructure mode, like I said, took a little bit more setup. You have to set up a static IP address for the access point, and you have to set up the SSID with some security. Ultimately, to log into it, you want to also set up a username and password on the access point, so that way you just did not run into anyone reconfiguring your access point and getting access to your network. A lot of this is discussed on pages 1071 through 1077, and then placing access points was on 1079. So it's got a good map on 1079 to show you some decent placements and where you might run into some issues with accessing it in this type of setup. So it's really good to go through. Bluetooth configuration. You work on that through your mobile device and your laptop or PC. read it on page 1080 and 1081. And there's some basic setup. You can set up a Bluetooth password if you need to, but ultimately it's just usually a personal connection between you and the device. Now let's talk about a little bit of troubleshooting some Wi-Fi. So what are some issues we can see with Wi-Fi? We can see obviously connection issues where it won't see the Wi-Fi. We can see some issues where you have slow speeds, or you can see the Wi-Fi and connect to it but not get any traffic. And then you have your software issues, like your wireless drivers could be corrupt. You reload those. The wireless access point could have a damaged circuit. So therefore, only one antenna works. If it's an N access point, then you may only have 2.4 gigahertz, and the 5 gigahertz network is dead. So, how can we determine some of this stuff? Well, let's talk about real quick on the laptop itself. Say we're working on a laptop. If you run into an issue where you see the wireless network and you can't connect to it, you may not have the proper password, or you may have a protected WPS only network. So you need to, if you have control of the wireless access point, you need to check your setup. Make sure you have the right password and everything. If you don't have access to that information, or this is not your wireless access point, you need to get with the owner or the manufacturer. If you can have some slow speeds, you may have issues where you have interference, or you may have a corrupt driver. So the other thing you could do is reload your wireless network drivers. After that, you start looking at your placement of your access point. There is more troubleshooting information on page 1084 through 1086. So after this, let's go ahead and dig into the lab. And I'm going to step through some of it with you. Okay? See ya. Hello everyone, and welcome to Week 11 Lab for Wireless Networks. So this lab is set up just like we have in the past. It's got 3 sections. Section 1, which is terminology. It's our normal terminology where I give you the term and you give me the definition or the function of the device. Section 2 is configuring a wireless access point. Now, does this mean I give everyone a wireless access point? No. But we do have a wireless access point simulator we're going to use online. Section 3 is setup and troubleshooting scenarios. This is our standard short answer detailed questions. So I want some good answers here. There's only 3 of them, as we'll see here in a minute. So section 1, like I said, is step down and show you that we have just our standard terms and definitions. Section 2, though, show you here. This is the website you're going to go to. You need to type this in exactly. So here it is http://tools with an s.netgear.com/landing/GUI /wireless/WNHDE111/simulators with an s/V, has to be caps, _1 _2 _3 _1 _0 _1 and a /. So we're going to go ahead and go to this site and start back at the beginning. And you can see we're now here at a wireless access point. This is 5 gigahertz access point, so this supports N. On the left here you see your menus. In the center is your content for that specific menu. As you can see, we're in the setup wizard. And on the right, you can see this blue field which has some definitions for each screen. You'll see it change when we go into the different menus. So let's go down, drill down. Under the basic section, you can see wireless settings. And this is where you're going to set your SSID or your wireless network name. your 802.11 mode. Right now it's set to N and A. And there still are some A adapters out there. Then you can see though you can set to N or A only also. I usually just leave this default. You can see your wireless channels, transmission rates, and so on and so forth, your encryption and stuff. Let's go to network settings. And here you can see this is the connection for the LAN for the wireless network, wireless access point. So right now it's set to DHCP. That way it gets its address from the router. And then you can set to static, which means that you can set a specific IP address that it uses all the time. I always set mine to static whenever I set it up at home, but everyone's different. So we're just going to leave it DHCP for now. Okay, under the advanced menus, we can see our MAC address filters. And you can see on the right hand side here, this is changed to show us our different features for that particular menu. So if you watch that through this whole thing, you'll see it change. Okay, we can see our MAC address filtering. You can leave it on, turn it off. Then we go to advanced wireless and we can see our transmission power. This controls our range and everything like that. Then we go to Wish, and this is a different feature. So if you look here on the right, it stands for Wireless Intelligent Stream Handling. This is for streaming media and stuff like that. So this access point is geared towards media centers and streaming video at home. And then you have your Wi-Fi protected setup, or WPS. You can see here's the pin. You can lock your security settings, stuff like that. Under our tools section, we have our admin screen, which allows us to change our password. We have our time. It is always good to keep your time in sync, so you'll want to make sure you set this if you ever do this at home. You have your system, and under system, what you can do is you can save your configuration, so that way in case the device is ever corrupt or goes bad and you get a new one of the same model, you can just restore that configuration, and then you just don't have to set up everything all over again by hand. If you're having issues, you can reset to factory defaults and reboot the device. And then you have firmware. Under firmware, this is that operating system for the device we were telling you about earlier. You can check for updates for the operating system, and you can upload a new one. You need to do this from a wired connection though, so just make sure you always do it from a wired connection. Under the status section, we can see our device info. And here we can get our LAN MAC address, our wireless MAC address, all that stuff there. And under wireless, we don't have anything under wireless right now. You can see wireless section allows you to view the wireless clients that are connected to your wireless access point. Since this is a simulator, there's nothing connected. Under logs, this section is good for in case you have issues with access point. You can see what might be going on. Statistics, again, since nothing's connected, you're not going to have any statistics. And wish sessions, again, since nothing is connected, you won't have any information here. So then you have your web support, go to knowledge base and documentation and such. So that's basically the wireless access point. So you get your information for the lab from that. If you have any questions on that, let me know. So then let's scroll down to section 3. And section 3 is our short answers. This is some decent scenarios here. You need to pull in all the information that you can research and know about wireless networking, because this is going to take some information. I want some good detailed answers here because I give you a decent amount of writing space. So you got only three, and they're worth 5 points each. So that means I definitely want some good answers. Okay, well, that's the lab. If you have any questions, I'll have a chat session available Wednesdays and Fridays. And then also, you can always reach me via email at the school email address that you can see up here. So any other questions, send me an email or catch me on chat. Good luck with your lab. Okay, well, that was some of the lab. And if you have any questions, get me on chat or email. Otherwise, we'll see you later.